Welcome y bienvenidos to this episode of Love Learning You. And one thing I want to talk about today is personality. Let's get into it. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you are following along on this journey, and we get to be on this journey together as we grow. Thank you so much for our current listeners and subscribers. We're continuing to grow daily. Actually, with our podcast, we've made some updates, had some branding shifts and things, and still making some partnership updates as we speak. But I am also happy to announce that we have reached over 100 subscribers here on YouTube. And I can't thank you all enough. If you have ever started a YouTube channel, you know that it can be pretty challenging to get going. And I'm so glad that you're here. So without further introduction, we're going to hop into personality and culture. So I'm mainly going to talk about personality today, but one of the areas of my research has been this isomorphism. And isomorphism is that you have two different concepts, big concepts, and they equally work together and impact and influence one another in our lives and who we are as human beings. And one isn't necessarily more influential or more powerful than the other, so to speak. We all have multiple things happening within us, whether that is our cultural origin story, our actual biological DNA material, and then also personality, which is shaped by environment, by how you are brought into the world, etc. In fact, most research indicates at this point, and it has for a good 40 or 50 years, that typically most of us, our personalities are formed in us by the age of 7 or 8, meaning our entire structure of how we manage conflict, what we need to do and engage with to get our psychological needs met. And furthermore, how do we actually communicate? Personality influences so much in how we communicate, which is why understanding our motivations, managing stress levels, understanding our distress patterns, you might know them as triggers, but your distress pattern or distress is just prolonged stress, actually indicates perhaps that there are some attention that needs to be taken to how you are meeting your own psychological needs. And this shows up in our lives personally and professionally. The reason I wanted to point out the isomorphism is you all know we talk a lot about culture and personality. So those kind of bigger buckets of cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, we're going to be covering a lot of that stuff here on this channel regularly and continue to do so. So I wanted to deep dive a little bit into personality and speak to those who resonate with the following depiction. And this is a strong energy that's present in my personality structure. Now, I will put in the link below if you'd like to set up a one-on-one with me. Feel free, and you can learn more about all of the different kind of inventories, and one in particular that we use to train astronauts at NASA and has been around about 40 years. It's built on a therapy model. You can feel free to check out the resources that I've linked. But going back to just an initial touch, and if this resonates with you, I'd love to have you comment below. But one of the things I noticed in my own life is not only these elements of being an empath or a highly sensitive person, but also being a people pleaser, also being a high performer. These patterns have been in my life since I was a child. And as an adult who's approaching 40, I am more and more deeply exploring these components. A lot of this was actually triggered in this rabbit trail in my own personal learning journey. It was triggered by not necessarily always understanding how to communicate well with my own mom. My mother passed away in a tragic way a couple years ago. I'll say it very unexpectedly. That is what made it so tragic. And just before that, actually 1 year before that, I became certified in this model. Now at the time, right, the people-pleasing tendencies were showing, and I'm going, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I need to be more credible. It's a classic thought process I found for my unique personality structure. And one of the things about my personality is this existential question of, am I enough? Am I enough? And so comment below if that resonates or something has ever come up for you in those thoughts. But I wanted to just explore with you all what that means to have a lot of emotions and also really love people, but then perhaps you don't experience that reciprocated in the same ways, which is okay. That is why it became very important for me to understand, who am I? How do I really love myself if I do not understand how I'm wired? That could be DNA, which you'll see some videos on here and such, and some upcoming series that are specifically about not only my ongoing personal learning journey, but just offering you all resources and sharing, because it's been quite the journey. And as a third culture kid as well, culturally, my mother was Amish Mennonite background, so a lot of Swiss, German, Dutch heritage. And then on that side of my family, along with some other things, and I'm speaking to my ancestry DNA results, but currently, but also then my father's Puerto Rican with some other things in there too. So that was always a point of curiosity. My last name's Gonzalez. Like there's always those points of curiosity since I'm a kid, because already I'm going into school settings where I'm being asked, where do you get your last name from? Why do you look this way? All of these pieces when you are in settings or you grow up in environments where perhaps you stand out in some way. And that I don't think is unique to me. I don't think it's unique to just third culture kids or any specific people group, even. I think at the end of the day, as humans, we actually have a lot of connecting points we can make over personality. And when we understand how we are wired in our personality, for me, once again, I told you I'm giving an example of one of my stronger energies in my personality structure from a psychological lens, is that you often hear me phrase things, I feel. We all have these different ways that we filter things. I mentioned earlier, I've always been very emotionally in tune. I've always been a very emotional, like very connected to emotions. Not labeling that as good or bad, but at times that has been a struggle, right? To understand, identify, and also accept. Why do I feel this way? Why is a commercial making me cry 30 seconds into it? So I'm putting out a bunch of things and telling on myself as usual so that you all have a little context. But, if you find yourself consistently wondering, does this person really care about me? Am I really enough? Those, I, for depending on your personality type, those are actually pretty normal things. And it's our responsibility, once we discover and learn more about ourselves, we want to know how to love even the parts of us that we see. When I first saw my results, right, for this same PCM, process communication model, where I'm a certified practitioner and trainer in that particular design. And I've also done a lot with human design, very much in tune with astrology, et cetera, all the things. Myers-Briggs, DISC, lots of different things in my life. And I will say this was very, very difficult for me to read and for me to digest, because it was a living 40 to 50 page report on me. And when it showed, we have something called in this model, PCM, process communication model, we have something called first degree distress, second degree distress, and third degree. Even just learning some basic language nuances of, oh, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm starting to spiral right now. And I don't mean spiral like you're going to see me on the news. I mean spiral like in your head. You're getting in your head. And how that looks for the unique energy that I'm talking about, where you feel feelings very deeply. You want to know how everyone feels. You might often like to be in small groups or collaborate with others. You're very intentional and often wanting more intimate relationships. You're wanting to go deeper with people. Those are tendencies that I have. Those can have very positive things and be our superpower, they can also be quite a mystery and cause a lot of shadows in our life to really block seeing ourselves for who we are. So when I found out that personality type, along with doing some of my own healing work over the years, going to different therapy modalities, including hypnotherapy, and being involved in the church, different churches, and having prayer partners and different people that I connect with regularly, as far as accountability, as far as learning together, growing together in this life, these this has come up so many times. And it's one of those things, once you know it about yourself, it's like you can't unsee it. So now when I'm filtering through a conversation, and I'll give a brief example of how this causes very predictable clashes, and specifically in your spousal relationships. Most of the leaders who I do their profile, their personality pattern inventory is what it's called, their personality pattern inventory, PPI. When I conduct that and debrief, we have a coaching session debrief where we also develop something called a personal vision roadmap. And that is based on developing a personal vision based on your unique personality type and understanding who you are, on a very, very deep level. Because in this particular model, it's also going to give you an action plan with how you can get your professional and personal psychological needs met and develop an ongoing system for yourself to check in. So it is one of the most valuable things, honestly, that I have done in my adult life. And I don't mean being certified to become a trainer in it. I became a trainer in it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours of work to become certified, over a year-long process, for myself in the context that I was enrolled in the program. And I would say, yes, it was the equivalent of what I learned in multiple years of therapy about myself, to be honest. So even though I say that, it was hard to read some of those things and go, that's exactly what I do. Down to, what are your inclinations for habits you have? And one of them, specifically for a strong personality energy that I have in my makeup and how I'm designed, is that we self-soothe, and we often do that with food. That has always been a consistent pattern in my life. But that can also be really hard when it's actually there in fact, because we often know these things, but the ego puts up defenses and justifies, because the ego is there to protect us. We don't want to have to look in the mirror and go, ooh, I'm looking a little chubby. I ate too many pizza slices. We don't want to have to do that. And if I really explored what was underneath those behaviors, and still things that I have to work through and stop and go, wait, why do you want to eat this right now? Or why this, right? If you don't know and you're not aware of the things, and you don't bring the things to your awareness about who you are, your unique personality structure, and eventually how that works in isomorphism with your cultural context, your cultural origin story, everything about you, and loving learning you, then it's really, really hard to love ourselves, including those parts that are really, really difficult to see on paper, or have somebody point out, especially the people we love, when they point out to us something that we usually already know, on a subconscious level, but they say it, and maybe they don't communicate in the ways that we receive communication well, or maybe we're in distress when they try to communicate it to us. I highly recommend, if you have not explored your personality in some way, I'm also going to link a free resource. In addition to, if you would like to do the paid profile that I just described, that has helped me immensely. I will also say it gave me a sense of better understanding before my mother passed away. And anytime I would speak with her and connect with her, it gave me a very different lens of understanding for how to love and accept her. And that helped me to better communicate with her. So, in a sense, because I had been going through a lot in my life, my mom has had many struggles for many decades. So there wasn't. She has tried to get help in different ways, but for me as her daughter, it was very, very, when I look back at these past, 4 or 5 years, and then the progression of being introduced to this powerful tool, learning a lot more about who I am in this process, that at least gave me a bit of closure because I could look at her with a different type of lens of love and understanding, if that makes sense. Because there was a lot of behavior she had that would be quite triggering. She did not feel emotion super deeply. So you can imagine the type of child and person I am where I'm noticing something in my energetic field or my intuition, the Holy Spirit, whatever you call that small voice. As a kid, if you're not believed, and then in fact, when you cry, whether it's for joy or pain or fear or anger, that is not honored and you are told to be quiet and you're not believed, that shuts off, right? The pieces of you who are actually the strengths. I'm dynamic with what I do in my professional life and have been for many years because I live out who I am and I tap into those things. Being highly empathic and sensitive to people's energy has served me very well. Being a teacher and principal the majority of my career. If we don't have those people skills, it's really, really hard. So then on the flip side, if you're more wired like how my mom was, and she had some struggles with understanding people's emotions, even processing her own emotions, etc. And I've struggled with the same things at times. It doesn't mean you're good or bad. So if you're saying, "Oh, I'm just like Justine, I'm always thinking about feelings and I'm concerned about people, or I cry when I see a news story," or if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and you're like, "I don't get people like that. I compartmentalize my stuff. I get through it and I use logic. I use that," right? There, my partner is more that way. He is more matter of fact, not because he doesn't have emotions or he's not tuned into them. He processes them differently than me. And he's been an immense help. We both have, when we actually see that as a strength instead of going at each other. Because what you'll notice specifically in close work relationships, as well as number one, your partner at home, that your romantic partner in your life or partners in your life, that dance, that cycle, you're going to keep doing it over and over. So a lot of the first years of our relationship and before I was introduced to understanding more about my personality in a very, very deep way, it would be like this in any conversation, no matter the topic, it would go something like this. Um, well, I feel like when you said that, blah, 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 that's not what I said. Right. So I'm paraphrasing what I might say and then how he might respond. I think that da da da. So his energy of personality filters the world through logic. So often he frames his sentences, I think, I think, I think. I often frame the world and in the energetics of my unique psychological structure, my personality structure. Psychology is underneath that, right? Because our psyche produces our personality as well, and how we show up, how we move in the world, how we process information, our brain. This is all brain stuff, and it's science, it's biological, it's connected to our DNA. So that is why I'm a huge, huge advocate here at Love Learning You, and everything we do is about asking questions and using our story, our own stories, right? I'm telling you mine because that's what I have. And I'm going to continue to pepper in other resources over time, share things from others. And we have a multitude of guests on our monthly featured voices interviews for Love Learning You too. But my challenge to you is explore the resources for sure that I've linked in these notes. And secondly, think about that dance that you do with the important people in your life, the people you really love and adore. Because when we're committed to understanding and learning each other and growing together, oh my goodness, we can move mountains. And I can tell you, my relationship is 1,000% better than it used to be before I went through this process because I could then speak his language. And also, yes, he also got a profile done so we could both see each other's. That's also a powerful exercise to do with the people you love and care about. We also have one for teens, and that is created developmentally just for them as far as the questionnaire for the personality pattern inventory. But one of the really interesting things is that I saw it shift how my sister interacted with her kids. I saw how I interacted with my nieces and nephews shift. my niece and nephews, excuse me, her children. Excuse me. So to land the plane, to wrap us up, I want to take a moment and just give you a charge to take one step to learning you. That dance that I'm talking about, where he shuts down because he told me very directly what he thinks and it's all logic. And then I shut down and I feel defeated because did he listen to me? But I told him how I felt. Doesn't he feel that way? No, Justine. His brain is wired differently. His personality structure is different, quite different. And so the way how we're looking at the world, even though it's the same conversation, the same setting, the same home, it's completely different. Then that layer of our cultural origin story, that throws in a whole other layer because we have learned behaviors over time that could positively or negatively influence the decisions we make. So this is a start of a continued long conversation around all things culture and personality, going deep, really exploring a lot with emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence in our upcoming episodes. And I want you to comment below the parts that resonated, the parts you found value. If you're listening on podcast, thank you, thank you. Please hit subscribe, share with a friend if you found any valuable nuggets. And let's come back. Let's continue to get compassionately curious together, and tell me in the comments what you want to hear about. No, I'm kind of moving a little slow today, but I've been in a pondering mood, been spending a lot of time outside, and I just think it's so important. And I know this from not doing it for years, that if we can just get alone with ourselves a little bit and learn more about ourselves, it's kind of this ripple effect of momentum. And it really impacts not only our life trajectory, but the lives of everyone around us. And I can say today, after becoming, being a part of that process, I chose to become a certified trainer because it so much changed my life. So much helped me better understand who I am, that, it's caused this ripple effect. And I see a big difference in how I communicate with others and continuing to refine that every single day. And I hope that you found this helpful. But tell me the topics you want to hear about. Tell me what else you want to know. And I put the resources in the notes here. Take care. And until next time, let's continue to get compassionately curious together.